There's a reason you've never heard the real story. Not from school, not from books, and definitely not from the self-help influencer with Stoicism tattooed on his wrist. You've only seen the polished surface, quotes framed on walls. Control what you can, let go of the rest. Nice, harmless. But that's not Stoicism. That's the watered-down version, the version that keeps you tame. The truth was carved in blood. Because Stoicism, real Stoicism, was never meant to comfort you. It was meant to forge you. It was Rome's elite mental warfare system, a psychological discipline reserved for emperors, generals, and warriors, not for the masses, not for the meek. In its purest form, it was dangerous, powerful, and absolutely forbidden to common minds. They don't want you to know this. But the original Stoic scrolls, they weren't motivational. They were strategic. They taught men how to rule without being ruled, how to dominate their own minds so completely that no enemy, no betrayal, no loss could touch them. You think resilience means bouncing back? They trained to never break in the first place. Musonius Rufus, a name you barely hear, but in secret they called him the Roman Socrates. He was exiled 5 times, tortured, beaten, and still, he walked like a king. He taught that your body could be imprisoned, but your mind, never. He whispered this power into the ear of a crippled slave. That slave was Epictetus. Epictetus became one of the most lethal mental tacticians Rome ever produced. He taught that pain was nothing more than an opinion, that suffering was a choice, that freedom didn't come from a throne, but from unshakable perception. He gathered his students in a small stone school. But this was no classroom. It was a mental boot camp. He broke men down, their beliefs, their fears, their excuses, and rebuilt them into sovereigns. He taught in secret. He taught in code. He trained future emperors, not to command others, but to command themselves. These were not public lectures. These were whispered operations, and in every word a pattern emerged. Do not seek comfort, seek command. Because in a collapsing world, your only weapon is you. You want proof? Look at Marcus Aurelius, Stoic emperor, warrior philosopher. His meditations were never meant to be read. They were field notes, writings he scratched in the margins of war, mental drills to survive betrayal, plague, famine, assassination. He was surrounded by enemies. Even his own son turned dark. But Marcus didn't lash out. He didn't panic. He returned to the code. He wrote, "The mind adapts and converts any obstacle into fuel." That wasn't poetry. That was strategy. That was mental jujitsu. In the cold chambers of the palace, he built something no army could breach, a fortress inside his own head. They called it the inner citadel, not a place, a state of being, where no insult reached him, no loss shook him, no pleasure enslaved him. It was mastery, silent, invisible, complete. But here's what they'll never say. That same code lives inside you. The elite didn't fear armies. They feared minds like his, untouchable, uncontrollable, unbreakable. So they burned it. In 64 AD, flames swallowed Rome, but the fire wasn't random. It was ordered, and in that fire, Stoic manuscripts disappeared, scrolls by Musonius, records of Epictetus's private lectures, gone. Nero, the emperor who feared Stoicism most, knew the danger. He had Seneca, Rome's greatest Stoic, killed by his own hand. Why? Because Seneca taught that a man could own everything and still be free from it. That terrified the empire. Because if men stopped fearing death, stopped chasing approval, stopped needing anything external, they couldn't be controlled. What happens when a man no longer fears loss? He becomes ungovernable, and that is exactly what they couldn't allow. So Stoicism was censored, castrated, sanitized for modern audiences, turned into journal prompts, call maps, Instagram quotes over sunsets. They stripped the discipline. They buried the pain. They removed the edge. They sold you serenity, so you'd never crave sovereignty. But some of us remember, because the signal never fully died. It went underground. Whispers in old text, fragments carved into forgotten stone, private letters smuggled across centuries. A few men kept the fire alive. They passed the real teachings through bloodlines, through monastic memory, through ancient guilds of thought, because they knew one day a storm would come, a time when comfort would fail, and men would need to remember how to endure. That time is now. Look around you. Collapse is not coming. It's here. Distraction is the new disease. Discipline is extinct. Pleasure is weaponized. You were born into a world that's collapsing, but you don't have to collapse with it. Because Stoicism, real Stoicism, was built for this exact moment, not to help you cope, but to help you command. And to claim it, you have to descend down into the forbidden, into the lost chambers of mental sovereignty, into the part of yourself that's been asleep. You are being controlled, but not by soldiers, not by kings, by systems you can't see. Distraction, comfort, noise, that's the leash now. They no longer conquer your body. They conquer your mind. And here's the twist. They're using Stoic principles to do it. Yes, the same code that once forged emperors is now turned against you. The same mental armor Marcus Aurelius used to survive betrayal and empire collapse has been hijacked, not to make you powerful, but to keep you pacified. The original Stoic blueprint wasn't peace, it was precision. Cold, tactical, unshakable mental control. They took that control and rewired it, not to free your mind, but to trap it. Algorithms now mimic Stoic logic. They track your behavior, trigger reactions, feed you outrage to distract, dopamine to sedate, and anxiety to bind. Why? Because a distracted man is easy to manage. He doesn't rebel. He doesn't lead. He obeys. And obedience is currency now. But Marcus Aurelius, he was no puppet. He wasn't guided by noise. He wrote in the dark hours, alone in his tent. While legions were dying, he told himself, "You are not the opinion of others. You are not your pain. You are not even your fear." He knew the secret. If you master your perception, you master the world, because the world is just what your mind calls it. So when death knocked, he didn't run. He wrote. When enemies plotted, he did not blink. He retreated to the inner citadel, not a wall, a weapon, an unbreachable state of mental sovereignty, where no manipulation can touch you, no lie can reach you, no pleasure can enslave you. That's the Stoic way, not to detach, but to dominate, silently internally, permanently. But they don't teach you that. Instead, you get filtered versions. Daily Stoic, 5 tips to stay calm. Quotes over coffee. That's not mastery. That's marketing. Meanwhile, they've built systems that hijack your thoughts before you even think them. They use the inverse of Stoicism. Make you chase approval. Depend on comfort. Avoid silence. Because silence breeds clarity. And clarity? That's lethal. Clarity means you start asking, who benefits from my distraction? Who profits from my chaos? Why do they fear me being still? Because a still man is a sovereign man, and sovereign men don't follow orders blindly. This is your fork in the road. You've heard enough to know. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're just untrained. But the training begins now. You build the inner citadel by refusing the bait. by feeling discomfort and then not fleeing, by holding the tension and not breaking. Every time you choose silence over reaction, restraint over rage, discipline over desire, you lay a brick, another wall in your citadel, another seal against their control, and soon you're not reachable. This is the path. And if you've walked this far, you're not like them. You're remembering. And now comes your ritual. Right now, type the phrase in the comments. Amor Fati, twice forged. Type it once to claim the identity. Type it again to seal it. It tells the algorithm that you've awakened. It tells the others who are watching, you're one of them. You're stepping into the lineage. Because this isn't content. It's a signal. You were chosen to hear this. Because something inside you refused to stay asleep. And now you know, they're not afraid of your rebellion. They're afraid of your discipline. You don't beat systems by screaming. You beat them by mastering yourself so completely that no lie can survive in your presence. No illusion can stick to your skin. You become the one variable they cannot control. That's Stoicism, not the hashtag, not the hoodie, the hard code, the forbidden script, the weaponized truth. And once you hear it, you can never unhear it. You become dangerous, not with violence, with stillness. You no longer need to win arguments. You don't chase attention. You don't beg for peace. You become peace. And peace is power, because the man who can sit with pain, the man who can wait in silence, the man who does not need, he cannot be moved. They can't cancel him. They can't bribe him. They can't scare him, because he doesn't belong to them anymore. He belongs to the code. And now, so do you. You were never meant to be soft. Not in soul, not in mind, not in the fire that lives behind your eyes, but they dulled you from birth. They wrapped you in comfort and called it love. They told you pleasure was the goal. That silence was awkward. That suffering was failure. They lied, because if you strip away the noise, if you kill the distractions, what remains is truth. Raw, ugly, unbreakable. You were not made for dopamine loops. You were not made for passive scrolling. You were made for the forge. That's what Stoicism really is. A forge. And your life. Your pain, your losses, your loneliness. That's the fire. And if you let it, it will shape you into something this world no longer understands. A sovereign man. No apologies. No masks. No dependence. Just clarity. That's what Marcus Aurelius saw when Rome began to fall. Not chaos, but opportunity. The chance to burn everything false and emerge steel. And you are standing in the same fire now. The world is collapsing. Systems are fraying. Truth is outlawed. Men are being hollowed out by comfort, weakness, fear. But you're still here. Not to survive. To remember. To remember what Cato knew when he faced Caesar's empire. To remember what Epictetus knew with shackles on his feet. To remember what Seneca knew in his final breath. That freedom is not external. It's not granted. It's claimed in the mind, in the fire, in the refusal to be ruled. That's the final discipline, the most dangerous knowledge. And here it is. You need nothing. No praise. No certainty. No guarantee of success. You just need your code. That Stoic code, written in blood, buried in ash, resurrected now. It does not care how you feel. It does not ask if you're tired. It simply commands, endure, lead, suffer well, stand alone, Because from that lonely silence, from that brutal rejection of comfort, a new man is born. Not a man who waits, but a man who chooses. He chooses meaning over pleasure, silence over validation, action over reaction, discipline over distraction, and in doing so, he becomes untouchable. You want rebellion? This is it. Not slogans, not rage. Stillness. Stillness when the world screams. Stillness when your body begs to quit. Stillness when your mind panics. You breathe. You remain. You endure. Because you are not the world. You are the watcher of the world. And that is power. This is why Stoicism was buried. Because if too many men awaken, systems collapse. You become harder to sell to, harder to addict, harder to break, harder to own. And that is what terrifies them most. Because a free man, he makes new systems. A sovereign man, he raises new empires. But a stoic man, a true stoic, he doesn't even need empires. He rules the only kingdom that cannot fall, his own mind. That's what you're reclaiming now. Your empire, your edge, your fire, not by learning, by remembering. You already had the code. You were just taught to ignore it. But now you've heard the signal, now you've felt the pull, and now the world will feel you. Because from this moment on, you don't react. You respond. You don't chase peace. You become peace. You don't run from the fire. You forge in it. You've been initiated, not into a belief, but into a lineage, a bloodline of sovereign minds who refused to kneel when the world begged them to crawl, and when others collapse, you rise. When others flinch, you focus. When others wait for orders, you move. Because you don't need approval. You have code. You don't need control. You have command. This is your last lesson. The Stoic doesn't fight the chaos. He absorbs it. He bends it. He becomes stronger because of it. And when the dust settles, he stands alone, unbroken, unmoved, unconquered. You are not a product. You are not a brand. You are not an echo. You are a citadel. You are a weapon. You are stoic. And now, they can't touch you.